Cixin Liu has no chill. That's what's happening, and I can't believe that I'm reading this.
It could change the world. On we go.
Hello, wonderful bookish family. Welcome back to Coffee Over Apples. My name is Steph. I'm super excited to finally do my vlog for book 2 in the 3-Body Problem series. This is The Dark Forest. Please go watch video 1 if you haven't watched it. This is probably going to be full of spoilers because it's the second book in the series and it's already so much fun. I'm only 35 pages into this book and I've already got a couple tabs. Now, the reason that I love 3-Body Problem is because to me, it's a comedy. To me, it is ridiculous. I compared the first book to like watching a C-drama or something like that. What's happening with this one so far? Okay, so we've got that dude, Kevin Evans, whatever his name is, the trust fund baby white dude who started the cult in book 1 is in the beginning of this book, and he's got the aliens talking to him, right? They're in his head, which we established was a thing in book 1. And so he's like, God, is that you? And they're like, nah, bitch, it's me. And he's like, okay, God. And they're like, sure, whatever. Like, call me your great dead grandpa. I don't care. Like, whatever. Just listen to what the fuck I have to say and do what I tell you to do. And he's like, sure, God. So we now get an explanation as to why he is bonkers, right? So he knows that the aliens think that the humans are inferior. And he's like trying to help them understand human psychology. The loofahs, the alien loofah guys, communicate with brainwaves. They don't speak, which is what we've established so far from his conversation with them. They're like, humans are dumb. You actually need orifices to be able to communicate. You're not sentient enough to just send brainwaves to each other. Therefore, you have lying, which makes no fucking sense. And he's like, what do you mean? You don't have politics? And they're like, no, we don't have politics because nobody lies, because nobody can lie, because everyone's just being straightforward, right? So I feel like it's really interesting how, according to that logic, I think that means that there's only like one set of culture and customs on this planet. And do you even have customs if it's something that can't be adapted according to interpretation of like values? Wild to me. Also, the aliens actually invading Earth is still 400 years away, and one of the first conversations that we get between just people is a guy talking to another guy saying, aren't you worried that your family will no longer exist? Aren't you worried about the human race? And like, don't we need to do something about it? He's like, dude, I'm not gonna be alive in 400 years. I can't sweat this. And they're like, yeah, but your grandchildren will. And he's like, who said I was gonna have grandkids, bro? Who said I was gonna have kids? So they're having a conversation about like societal expectations and ways of dealing with this that are going to affect the future generations. But people are also just like, what if I don't want to have kids? What if knowing that the aliens are going to come and that humans are going to be subservient means that I just don't want to have kids, so there's nobody going to be here for them to invade when they get here, kind of thing. Loving it. Absolutely loving it. And the prologue with the ant who is walking across a grave and trying to understand the path to find whatever ants, looking for food or a way back to their anthill, is walking across this grave and listening to a conversation that obviously the ant doesn't understand about, it's like a cosmic sociology, since we now know that there are aliens on other planets, even though we've only got the one so far, that there must be more. So what happened? So I don't know if that's alluding to there are going to be more aliens from other planets intervening at some point in this book, but I'm here for all the aliens. Give me all of them. Give me all the shenanigans. And that's where I'm at. That's a lot for 35 pages, but just having a blast. This is an update for the Dark Forest. I gotta laugh because it's so ridiculous. Like, it's just melodramatic, bonkers. Cixin Liu, what were you thinking, my guy? The UN has established a group of 4 people. These 4 people did not know that they were going to be nominated for this position called the Wall Facers. And the Wall Facers are a project, an open secret, because they are tasked with coming up with a plan on how to just deal with the aliens that are coming. And the reason that they're given this task and that it's an open secret is because the aliens can know anything that is spoken, right? The aliens can use the sophons, which are this 11th dimension particle that they've been using since book 1 to communicate with the people who are in the cult, to access any information that is public. The only space that they can access is within the human mind, right? So they need people to think of plans and have secret ways of going through with those plans that don't have to necessarily be verbalized, or can be verbalized in codes or other ways that could potentially throw the aliens off, things like that. So they have so much power because everything that they do could be part of the plan and nobody could know any better. Liu gets picked up by Dashi, love Dashi still, gets picked up by Dashi, brought to the United Nations in New York City, is made part of this. He's like, well, what if I don't want to do it? And they're like, okay. He's like, well, I'm gonna leave now. And they're like, we suggest you bring security with you. He goes, no. Walks out of the UN building, immediately gets almost assassinated by a cult member. And then he's brought to the hospital, and he asks to speak to the cult member. Now he has security. And they're like, yeah, my plan failed. And he goes, well, I quit anyway. And they go, all right. And what he starts to realize is that it doesn't matter if he says he's not part of it. It doesn't matter what he says he is or isn't doing, because every single thing that he says can be assumed to be a part of the project. So, like, he could say he's not doing it, but he could still really be doing it. And this leads to bigger problems later with the other members for various reasons. But before I get there, like, so this other guy, right? This other guy, I'm gonna drop some wild shit on you right now. He decides that his plan is gonna be this, like, mosquito swarm in which they're gonna build these fighter pilots to go into space when the aliens get here and battle the aliens, and, like, bring bombs close to the alien ship to blow up, which means that it's gonna be a suicide mission. So he's like, I need pilots who understand that they're going to go on this mission and they're not going to come back. So, who should I go to? I know, let's work with the Japanese. So he goes to Japan, and I think he speaks to the Prime Minister, or if it's not the Prime Minister, it's like head of Japanese military, whatever, general. And he says, hey buddy, we need your help. I want to bring back kamikazes. You guys know how to do this. Let's make it happen. Let's save the world. And the general's like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. That was not a good thing that happened in our history, and our values on that have changed, and we're not going to ask somebody to do that for our government. Like, more or less, fuck you. We're not bringing back kamikazes. So he leaves pissed off that he couldn't convince the Japanese to do this for him. I think his name is Tyler. So then Tyler is like, well, next best bet, I'll go to Al-Qaeda, because Al-Qaeda has suicide bombers. It's like, bro, what is your problem? So he goes and finds the head of Al-Qaeda hiding in a mountain in Afghanistan. Like, tell me this is not the most cliche shit you've heard, right? And then he goes up to him, this old man, and he brings him a peace offering, which is like a really nice edition of Isaac Asimov's books. And he says, hey, buddy, so I know that you're hiding, and I know that Al-Qaeda is like kind of going extinct, question marks. He's like, listen, if you can guarantee that your soldiers will carry out this mission for me when the aliens get here in 400 years, I'll make sure that Al-Qaeda doesn't get extinguished by the United States. And the head of Al-Qaeda is like, please tell me you brought me something better than these really nice editions of my favorite book to make me want to say yes to this. And Tyler's like, not really. Like, I can pull strings, you know? And like, make sure that that's a guaranteed offer. And Al-Qaeda's like, fuck you. We're not doing that. We don't trust you. No. I don't think you understand why we do what we do anyway. So, like, no. But thanks for the books. So Tyler leaves really pissed off. And his backup plan is that he's just going to put himself in cryosleep and do it himself. And the U.S. finds out that he found out what the head of Al-Qaeda is and he didn't handle their problem. And now they're mad at him. So they want to revoke his power. So stupid. It's like, it's like almost a comedy. It's so ridiculous. So I have to laugh. It's wild. Absolutely wild. Cixin Liu has no chill. Luigi is an asshole. Like, I really don't like him. I think he's supposed to be the character that we care about the most because he's like going through this thing where he used his power to just like get a nice house and ask them to give him a house somewhere where he doesn't know where he is, because then no one can like bother him or know what part of his plan is. If he ever comes up with a plan, he doesn't even know where he is. So they do that, and then they find him the perfect girl that he describes to them. And right now the tension is that it's flash forwarded a couple years, and they find him the perfect girl who becomes his wife, and she's like, am I part of your plan? And he goes, yeah, and that gives her like a sense of responsibility because he just keeps telling her to be happy, and she's like, is my happiness part of your plan? And he's like, yeah. I don't know, I have a feeling she might be one of the cult members, because we also know that the cult members are going against, or like have special task members who are trying to like get rid of these people. The wall facers, which are the people who are facing the aliens, they're called, and the wall breakers. Oh my god, it's like it's so cliche. It's like painfully cringy. That's what's happening, and I can't believe that I'm reading this. Okay, I have so many things that I need to say to you about this. I'm 3/4 of the way through with the Dark Forest, and I'm having so much fun with this, okay? This is my kind of hard sci-fi. I love it. If you haven't, like, if you're the kind of person who needs hard sci-fi and likes an explanation, the one thing I do gotta say about this is that there are monologues and exposés about every kind of theory. Everything that's brought up in here is fully fleshed out and explained, and it's great, okay? The one thing that I don't like about it is that all of the characters sound exactly the same. There's no difference in voice, because they all just read like Cixin Liu, and I could just hear him talking through it, and it's whatever. One of the other guys came up with a plan. His wall facer plan to deal with the alien situation was to put a bomb on Mercury that would essentially be a threat to the aliens, saying, listen, if you invade Earth, I'm gonna kill everybody along with it, because Mercury would be pushed into the sun and would cause the sun's atmosphere to expand, eventually engulfing Venus and the Earth, and like every time another planet goes into the sun, it would cause the energy outside of the sun to become thicker and expand, and so eventually the entire solar system would like fall into the sun. So if we can't have it, nobody's gonna have it, right? That was his plan. But he got kicked out because once his plan was revealed by his wall breaker, they told him that his plan puts humanity at risk, and even though it's like, I get it, it's a threat, the aliens have consistently proven that they don't care. So far, it's portraying the aliens as being selfish, or like that the aliens are invaders, in that they're here for conquest, and that this is just kind of the nature of what it means to have extraterrestrial interaction, that it's always going to lead to conquest and war. But I think that the reason that the aliens keep saying no matter what plan the humans come up with, they're literally just like, we don't care, is because they don't have another choice. This is their last-ditch effort for survival. And so in the beginning, in the first book, when we learned that they were warned that the aliens were gonna come, they're coming because this is literally, if it doesn't work, their species is doomed, right? So I'm thinking that that's where book 3 is gonna go. The third wall facer, Hines, I thought his idea was super interesting. And this is kind of where I'm struggling with this book. So basically, the idea behind Hines's project was that he wanted to uncover parts of the human mind. And so he accidentally found out that you can use radiation and certain forms of questioning simultaneously to give people a solid neurological seal to reinforce an idea in their heads for them to believe that it is true. He got approval from the United Nations to fund this project because they were like, listen, you can't force anybody to believe in another religion. You can't force anybody to believe in anything that is opinion-based or anything that's like not helpful or not related to this specific mission, because it's unethical. So he phrased it as, well, if I have them come in voluntarily to do this mind seal, and it's what's only being reinforced is for them to have an unshakable faith that humans are going to succeed, so that our military goes into battle with a sense of positivity. They were like, sure, okay, go for it. And they created this whole process, and all these people were present, right? But it doesn't matter how many representatives and other scientists are present if the only people who really understand the nitty-gritty of how this experiment works is Dr. Hines and his wife, who's also the other scientist who works on it with him, right? So it's like, yeah, sure, they're there for it to like check off a list of yes, so-and-so, and all these people signed off on it, but they don't really know what to look for. And of course, that backfired, because turns out that he was trying to work with a bunch of other people in the background to come up with an escape plan for humans. And he wanted people to find peace, I think, by like just accepting that if they don't focus on it, then they kind of just live their lives, and they can focus on building an escape plan in the background. And so he actually rigged the experiment so that instead of reinforcing their faith in battle, they actually lost faith in it and were like, okay, we gotta get out of here, right? Because that's what he truly believed. So because of that, his ideas of escapism and what's repeatedly being defined as defeatist attitude, he is kicked out. Like, I loved that chapter where we were talking about different people who are coming in and asking him for favors to help them believe in stuff, like, hey, I want to be with this one guy came in and he said, hey, like, I really want to build a stronger connection with my wife, but she's super religious and I'm not, and I just kind of want to be a pacifist and just believe in religion and kind of like not have to worry about anything and think that everything is on my shoulders. Can you instill faith in me? And the doctor said, no, like, I can't do that. Especially, but not only because he really couldn't supposedly do that because of this, he was already risking so much by changing the code to make people give up in the idea of war, that if he changed too much of other things, people would have caught on. but also he himself like had no faith in it, right? So I love that chapter. I thought it was super interesting, and like that's kind of what I want more from this series, is like Cixin Liu has so many interesting and cool scientific ideas that I just want us to sit with them for a while, but it's just a barrage of cool theories and ideas, and it makes me think of when I was in high school and we read 1984 and like other books set in the past, and talking about how people of the past predicted that the future, the contemporary, would be. And it's so interesting to see that contrast. And so I wonder how many of Cixin Liu's ideas are going to come to the future, like to fruition in the future. It's just so interesting to me. I absolutely love it. But at the point where I'm at, we are currently in the future. Dashi, my man, I love him so much. He's so funny, and the fact that he survives into 200 years in the future is great. I guess the only part of this that like kind of took me out of it was that there was a hibernation that the scientists and the wall faces and other people can do so that they can survive up until different parts of the future to make it to when the aliens get here in 400 years. But they keep being brought out. They were brought out of hibernation after 200 years because the wall facer project was vetoed. And it is now void, so they're no longer employed by the government, but people are still trying to kill them, and Dashi's there to save them. So what are you gonna do? I don't know, but it's so good. Time for my final thoughts for Dark Forest. I finished Dark Forest, and I think originally right off the bat I was feeling 4.5 because I do really like this series, but as it's been sitting with me since I finished it yesterday, I'm thinking it might be a 4, and I'm thinking I might like book 1 more than this one. Here's the Dark Forest theory is basically like the notion that the reason that we haven't gone into contact with other alien planets, even though there is statistical probability that we might run into them eventually more frequently should we have the technology to be that expansive in our communication, is because everyone is intentionally being quiet. Because the moment that you find another civilization, due to the needs of civilization by nature needing to be expansive for the sake of survival, that would automatically lead to conflict, and that because these are different species which with a higher probability of not having the same modes of cultural concepts and communication, have to assume that any other civilizations that they make contact with are dangerous and deadly. So yeah, like with that information, I at least thought I knew where this was going to go. And it kind of, in a way, does, but that's not the main point. The main point is, how does civilization try to push forward in our technology in this arms race to defend ourselves against the aliens? And it just goes buck wild, and I freaking love the science of this. So I'm docking points from this just because I wasn't vibing with the characters as much. And even though I am mostly a plot-driven girly, I got bored at a certain point. I got bored just because I'm like, I don't like Liu Ji. He's a dick. Dashi's cool, but he's not like as dramatic and engaging and risky, I think, as in the first book. So I was like, I feel like more could be done with him. And the other wall facers all really read the same. Like, everyone had the same personality, in my opinion. And I don't think that is because when you talk about scientific theory, that it's like a one-size-fits-all. That communication has a lot to do with tone and intonation and inflection. And while that could come out in different ways, I think it has to do with Cixin Liu's writing, because every character, and again, this is something I think I also saw in the first book, but is more prominent here, kind of just talks the same. There's definitely a bit of a cultural dissonance because the language, talking, consistent use of like defeatism and triumphalism and, you know, all these other isms that I'm just like, why do we care about this? So again, those things become relevant. So it wasn't frivolous, but it was excessively used. And I don't know if that's the translation or if that's just like grating against my personal sensibilities. But anyway. this one had so many good concepts. It was so fun to see them debated, flushed out, come to fruition. Some work mostly, some kind of fail, but if they fail, it's not really usually at the fault of the experiment, but rather at the fault of the humans who are interfering with them. And I thought this one was like a ton of fun. The battle of darkness that happens, the droplet that comes, the alien probe. And I really did like what Liu did at the end, and how he kind of put a standstill on this whole situation by tying it back to book one. But the lack of character development in here kind of pissed me off. I don't think Cixin Liu can write a character arc to save his freaking life. Because really the only one I think we truly get here is Liu. Because in the beginning of the book, he's just this man of science, doesn't want to be bothered, hasn't really done too much with his life from his standpoint, but like arguably, I mean, dude, you've done stuff with your life, but whatever, you know, we're holding you to a different echelon of society standard. He goes into this project looking for the perfect woman, and that part just kind of icked me out. It gave me the ick. And the way that he's resolved towards the end is like, okay, he used his resources as a wall facer to share his vision of the perfect woman, because he couldn't find the perfect woman on his own, so he was basically dating his imagination, more or less. And then he asked Dashi to find a woman that had all of these traits, right? That was submissive, that was pretty, that was of this level of intelligence, blah, 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 that kind of looked like this based off of a sketch that he made. And Dashi pulled through, found him a Chinese woman who fit the bill, and she was an artist. And so it was like kind of nepotism, I think, if I recall correctly, because she was connected to someone that he was able to find. Anyway, they were able to use face recognition software to like find this person based on his thing and then filter her characteristics and like follow her and whatever. So anyway, they hired her for this thing. And she basically comes there just to be Liu's wife. And there's a particular scene that happens where he takes her to the Louvre, and while they're there, they're talking about the Mona Lisa and they're talking about all the artifacts that are on exhibit. There's a conversation that happens about the greatness of human society and being able to sustain these works of art in this museum, because that's the only way that they could be sustained. And I was like, tell me you're a colonizer without telling me you're a colonizer. Like, that's just, no. This whole argument of, well, if these pieces of art were in their original countries, that they wouldn't be able to be sustained because they're like lesser civilizations. I hate that. I hate that so much. So I'm like, ew, this guy's an asshole, right? And my concern was that that wasn't going to be addressed. But towards the end of the book, the good thing for me is that he is addressed as being an asshole. Like, other people kind of call him out that he is an asshole. And because he doesn't really do much as a wall facer for the most part, the government kind of uses his wife and his future kid as blackmail to get him to do something about the alien crisis. So when he does something in the end, he does it more for selfish reasons rather than just like the greater good, which is fine. Like, he still got the job done, whatever. Ultimately, I think it did make the story more interesting that he was an unlikable character, that it was seeming to me that he was written to be unlikable, and that he did what he did because of personal motivations. And like, that's an interesting story. I have nothing against that. I think it was just that overall, I didn't have characters in here that I was like super invested in. And that's kind of what I had in book one. Like, book one, Dashi really was the GOAT. And here he still is the GOAT, but we get a little bit less of him, even though he does play an important role. And it wasn't as funny. I don't know if the reason that it wasn't as funny is just because we have a different translator, or if that's just the way it was written. So book three, Death's End, is
translated by Cixin Liu, I think. Yeah, translated by Cixin Liu, who translated book 1. And since I'm pretty sure Dashi's going to be present in book 3, I'm going to be looking to see if it gets that comedic aspect back for me, which I know a lot of other people may not have found comedic, but just the way it was written and the timing, like there was a little bit of that in the beginning of this book and then it just kind of fell off. So I don't know, like I enjoyed it. I had a great time. There was great fun science in here. There were some ridiculous risks that were being taken and some really good like political, ethical conversations. But eventually I'm like, okay, where's my drama? Where's my fun? Where's my action? So I mean, I was satisfied with the big battle that happens with the alien probe later on. I found that super cool and super fun. The timing of it being triggered was as if the aliens were just waiting for the humans to figure this out so they could be like, gotcha. And I thought it was great. I absolutely love the TV show. I'm thinking about making a like book to TV show comparison video because I watched season 1 on Netflix and it was so great. It was so great and so different. I had a great time. Absolutely love this. Cannot wait to get to the 3rd book, but I need a little bit of a break. I need something light after this because this was really science heavy. But one thing I've definitely learned about this is that I need those kinds of exposés in my hard sci-fi. Like, yeah, spell it out for me. It's okay. I wanna know. Even if it's something that I'm already familiar with, I think the assumption that these higher concepts that our characters are assuming that everyone understands when they're talking to a layperson is like, no, they probably don't. So explain this to them and explain how it's effective. Anyway, so yeah, I'm okay with that. I had a great time. I totally recommend this if you are a fan of hard sci-fi. If you are a character-driven person, you're probably not gonna like this, but that's just my opinion. If you've read this and you were vibing with any of these characters in this book, I guess let me know. Anyway, I post videos whenever I feel like it. Thanks for watching. Bye.
What's it making, Mr. Wonka? Mr. Wonka work the factory.